Hello, my name is IN0010. I am happy to be here today to represent the forage placement and production side of the FFA. I started out with little to no experience, but it was thankfully to my mom and dad and my grandparents that have taught me almost everything I know besides what I have learned going out west. I started off as an infant riding along on a hay wagon baling hay with my parents, to growing up to being in high school to taking on a partnership with my dad, where which led me into being able to see the business aspect of things and understand how things actually need to work. And that took me on to the part of helping with my neighbors because they were short-handed and they never had enough help. They had all this hay ground and we never had a whole lot of hay ground, so we formed another partnership with some friends of ours, and that just took us even farther, and we provided the hay that we needed for our cattle and their livestock that they had, and helped us out and helped them out and taught me a lot because I was working with other people, and we had 4 or 5 different landlords that we were working with, and all of that contributed a lot. And then I went on, after high school, I went on to college out west, and I have had the opportunity to work on a 2,000-acre hay operation, and we made a lot of big bales. We only made big bales. They don't make small bales. And we also did a lot of forage production there. And it was because I went out west that I got to learn all that. I mean, they do things a lot differently than they do here in this part of the country.
What advice would you give to others starting a forage production placement SAE?
I would have to advise that coming into the New Deal, you have to understand when is the time to cut and when is the time to bale and your dry time for your hay, because not all hay is going to dry the same. Not all weather patterns are the same. Everything is different because the climate is changing. So is the world. And you have to learn to adapt with it, and it's hard to understand, but you have to be able to understand the concept of how the weather works. And you have to be out there to see how things are working. And you have to understand how your equipment's going to work and listen to it. For when you start hearing weird noises, you have to stop and figure out what's going on, what's your problem. Address it before you cause more issues. There are older people in the world that have done this a lot longer than you, and they have experience that you don't have. And taking and listening to what they have to say will help you tremendously. And I could tell you, if I wouldn't listen to some of the older guys, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, because they are the reason why I am where I am.
If you were the employer at Jared E squared plus B squared Holmgren Farm, what is the first change you would make in the business?
I would have to go with taking soil samples, because I know that soil samples are the biggest thing that determine your production. And if your yields aren't right, you're not going to have your right production. And if you're a dairy farmer, you want the highest yield you can get, because milk production is very important. And I've seen that firsthand, and that's a big thing that a lot of guys don't want to see is bad ground. They're constantly testing the ground. And that's what it comes back to, is testing. You have to check and make sure all your pHs and your nitrogen levels are where they need to be.
How will the skills you mentioned in your application impact your goal of being a heavy equipment operator?
After working this summer, I can tell you that these skills have really made it easy for me to go into the workforce, because even my foreman and my employer, they both looked at me and goes, we've never seen guys come in here that understand their equipment and can call their mechanic and tell them that there's a problem before there is a serious issue. You know when something starts making noises that something's not right, and you can take it up to your mechanic and you can tell him, hey, this ain't right, and he checks it out and yeah, there's something that's not right. And that's the biggest issue that guys have in my line of work. They just don't understand their machines. Starting with Forage, that's where I learned it all.